Hill House. It stood for 90 years and will probably stand for 90 more, and it's probably best left alone. But apparently Dr. Markway didn't get that memo, because he thought it would be a good idea to assemble a cast of strangers to stay there as an experiment. Hello and welcome back to Fatal Film, a watch-along horror movie video series where every 2 weeks I give you guys a horror movie, and then we sit down and we talk about it. This week we watched the 1963 original The Haunting, based on the Shirley Jackson novel The Haunting of Hill House. Now before we get into it, back in October I watched the Netflix series The Haunting of Hill House, and I absolutely loved it. It's like a 10-episode series, one of the best things that Netflix has done in a long time, and that kind of turned me on to like some of the other adaptations based on the book, like The Haunting, obviously the 1963 film we're about to talk about. And it was kind of neat watching it from this perspective after watching the Netflix series. They tell very different stories, but they share a lot of the same characters. Obviously the house is almost like a character in itself. The characters, like, they have like the same names, but their relationships are quite a bit different. Like the plot is quite a bit different. I think the 1963 film follows the plot of the book a bit more closely, quite a bit more closely than the Netflix adaptation. And even though they are different, it's kind of cool to see that, yes, they're both cut from the same cloth. They're both using the same source material, and so you'll see like little details that are the same, you know, the writing on the wall telling Nell to go home, you know, the scene of like Nell dancing by herself, the big spiral staircase, little details like these, the statues. Still kind of cool to see like the similar thread between the two. So the movie starts off with some shots of the house and some exposition, some narration by one of the main characters, Dr. Markway. And Dr. Markway, basically, he has like this fascination with the house. He has like a fascination with, you know, hauntings and things of that nature. Even though he's like an academic, he's an educated man, he still has like this morbid kind of curiosity with these kind of unexplainable phenomena. And he's been investigating the house, and he's been coming up with like a list of candidates that he wants to bring into the house and to stay there as an experiment. So he finally goes and he's able to get a lease for the house, and so he's renting it out, and he invites all of these random people to come and stay at Hill House. And so only 2 people from his list actually end up coming to stay at the house. So one of them is a lady named Theo, and the reason why Markway wanted to bring her in is because she's a psychic, and she can kind of like read into people's pasts and stuff like that. And the second person who comes in is another girl named Eleanor, or Nell for short, and the reason why Dr. Markway wanted to bring her in is because as a child, she got tormented and haunted by a poltergeist. And the final person who's staying at the house is a guy named Luke, and he was not on Dr. Markway's list. He's actually the heir. He'll eventually inherit Hill House one day, but he was there by the request of the owner. So the first 30 minutes of the film, I would say, are basically just introducing the cast, introducing our characters, our 4 main characters, and then getting them to the house. So while at the house, while staying at Hill House, you know, they experience weird kind of phenomenon, like banging on the walls, doors just opening and closing by themselves, you know, cold spots, things being just like strangely drawn on the walls. You know, just a bunch of like strange kind of mysterious things that they can't really explain. And I think a lot of the movie has to do with how each one of the main characters kind of handles these events, handles these kinds of mysterious things that they can't explain, and how they cope and how they deal with it. I feel like a lot of this movie is psychological as much as it is like supernatural. Much of the movie kind of focuses on Nell, on Eleanor, and you know, she's probably the most mentally kind of unstable of the entire bunch. And to be honest, I think she was kind of losing her marbles even before she was at Hill House. And I think they really do kind of go out of the way to kind of show you that, because they'll narrate like conversations she's having with herself in her head, and that started happening even before she arrived at the house.
At last I'm going someplace where I am expected and where I am being given shelter, and I shall never have to come back.
She was just kind of having like these inner monologues, and she has a lot of self-doubt and a lot of uncertainty, and she has a lot of talking to herself. And a lot of the movie does really focus on Nell. It's almost like it is almost her story. A lot of it is through her perspective. You don't really have like a lot of solo shots with any of the other characters. It's either Dr. Markway or Nell. They're kind of like the key characters in the film. And Nell, not only is she like the most mentally fragile, and a lot of these unexplained events definitely take a toll on her, but she's really she loses her temper, and she goes through mood swings in this movie, especially in like one of the opening scenes where you first are introduced to Nell, and she's staying with her sister, and she's just being super dramatic and just causing a scene and just being borderline like unreasonable.
I happen to be in my bedroom and I pay a good part of your rent for it. Now get out before I show you what my nerves can really do.
Where I think it's like a clear indication that she was kind of mentally unstable from the beginning of the film. So in like the third act of the movie, Nell has definitely started to degrade mentally, and the house is almost it's almost like singled her out and really kind of focused on her with like the hauntings and the writing on the wall telling Nell to go home. And again, in the third act of the movie, we're introduced to a new character. Her name is Grace. She was actually Dr. Markway's wife, and she has decided to stay at the house as well. And things really start to go crazy once Grace arrives at the house. You know, I say that like the house probably affected Nell the most, but in reality, the house probably affected Grace the most. Because that chick, she didn't last one night. Seriously, like the first night she arrives, she goes missing. She straight up goes missing. They can't find her. The four of them are kind of holed up in one of the rooms. They're hearing like this mysterious sound, and Nell goes and she kind of like goes and pursues the source of this noise. And it leads them to like the big spiral staircase. And the spiral staircase, super dilapidated, super unstable. It's kind of like come unhinged at the top. So like super dangerous. I wouldn't go up these stairs, but Nell is there. She's clearly out of her mind, and she's starting to ascend the stairs. And like the three, you know, Dr. Markway, Luke, and Theo, they're all like, Nell, stop, what the fuck are you doing? And she's really starting to like scare them at this point because she's clearly not in a correct state of mind. So Dr. Markway, he goes up the stairs after her, you know, to kind of go up and bring her down. And this was really like a real intense scene, and you really, at this point, see the full effect, the full toll that the house has kind of taken on Nell. And none of the remaining characters kind of trust her at this point. And like this movie didn't have a lot of jump scares, but at the very end of this scene, there was one thing that just kind of totally caught me off guard. At the very top of the stairs, there's this little like trap door thing. And for whatever reason, Nell looks up and the trap door opens and it's fucking Grace. And she's looking just as crazy as Nell is. And I'm just like, what the hell? They're both going insane. Grace didn't last one night. Nell's already going crazy. It was almost like comical in a way. It's like, yeah, Nell went crazy, but goddamn, Grace literally didn't last 24 hours in this house before getting like completely possessed. And she didn't know what the hell was going on. So the sight of Grace at the trap door, you know, the jump scare kind of caught Nell off guard, and she passes out. So once Nell wakes up and she comes back to, like, the remaining members in the house, they've had enough. They've seen enough. They're like, Nell, you gotta get the hell out of here. I'm pretty sure at this point, you know, yes, the house has gotten to her, but they're all probably thinking, they're all on the same wavelength. They're like, damn, Nell, this chick is freaking insane. This was a mistake. And this is at the end of the film, and it's so abundantly clear, like, how much the remaining characters just want to get rid of her. They just want to get her out the door. They want her gone, dude. And Nell, she really doesn't want to leave. As I said, you know, she was staying with her sister. She doesn't have her own place to stay. She doesn't have a life. She doesn't have a job. She's got nowhere to go, really, but back to, like, her sister's couch. To her, even though she's kind of lost her mind and she's afraid and the house has been, like, haunting and tormenting her, she doesn't want to leave. In her mind, Hill House and everything that's happened is one of the best things that's ever happened to her. Again, she's really kind of lost her mind at this point. But everyone else is really forcing her out. So she takes off in her car, and whether it's on purpose or not, she ends up crashing her car on the grounds of the house, not even making it through the front gate. And she dies right then and there. And then crazy old Grace, she kind of jumps out at the last minute. Whether she caused the crash or not, you know, it's kind of to be determined. But Dr. Markway, he pronounces her dead right there on the spot, and you know, Eleanor, in a way, got what she wanted. She never left Hill House. So that's the plot synopsis of the film. It is a horror movie, but it's, you know, it's not going to be like a contemporary horror movie. This is a classic horror movie. There's not a big emphasis on jump scares or anything like that, except that one through the trap door. This is a movie that's really all about atmosphere. I really, like, we need to talk about the house and the set design, the cinematography, because honestly, the star of the movie, the star of this film, is the house. The set design, the house in this movie, it's really captivating. It's really going to be the thing that sucks you into this film. All of these sets, these designs, and the interior of the house, they're so well designed and so detailed and so well decorated. It really is kind of like a sight to behold. There's so much to look at in every single scene. I know this movie was shot in black and white, 1963, but color film did exist at the time, but I really think the black and white kind of aesthetic, I think that does a lot for this movie. I think black and white was the right call. I think that is the biggest strength of the film, the visuals, the aesthetics, the cinematography, the set design. I think if you're a big kind of like cinephile like that and you really kind of appreciate those types of things, I think you're really going to like this movie. And the music, there's like this orchestrated score in this film, especially on like the wide shots of the exterior of Hill House. There's so many scenes where, man, they're just going crazy. They're going crazy on their instruments. It's like the orchestrator's just like, all right, doesn't matter what note you guys play, just fucking blow into that shit. Let's go. Perfect. But jokes aside, I think the music really does kind of serve its purpose and build the atmosphere. As far as like, as a horror film, you know, and being scary, I think if you're like a fan of modern horror films, I don't think you're going to find this movie super scary. The kind of the scares and the horror doesn't really amount to a whole lot more than you know, banging on the walls and doors opening and closing by themselves. Like there's this one scene in like the bedroom with Theo and Nell, and they're just kind of like holed up together, just looking at the door while it's just banging. There's just banging on the door, and this scene goes on for quite a while, and it doesn't really amount to anything more than that. So I don't think I could recommend this movie to like a mainstream movie-going audience, but if you're a fan of film, classic films, horror films especially, I definitely think that this is like required watching. And for myself, just like personally, I found myself really engaged and really just like sucked into this film based nearly solely off of like the visuals, the cinematography, the set design. I think they were all so good, so on point, and I really enjoyed it. I give this movie like a 7.5 out of 10. But that is going to be it for my thoughts on the 1963 horror film The Haunting. Let me know what you guys thought about it. I hope you guys are watching along, because, you know, that's the whole point of the series. That's why there are so many spoilers in every goddamn episode. But for next episode, I was thinking about what we're going to watch, and we are approaching the release of a remake of a classic horror film called Pet Sematary, and it's also lining up with the 30th anniversary of the original, the 1989 original Pet Sematary, based on the Stephen King novel. And I watched this movie, the original, back when I was a kid. I have vague memories of it, so I have not watched it in my adult life. So that's what it's going to be for next episode of Fatal Film, the 1989 Pet Sematary, and we will talk about that in 2 weeks' time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out.